I have the gentleman I'm about to present has a tremendous following, as you can see. We're like now it's like beyond standing room. They're actually sitting on the ground. They've come to see you do your thing. It's you're an old-time buddy of mine, so it's my pleasure to introduce you. Without further ado, Raphael Grassetti. Make some noise.
There you go. Thank you. It's good to see you. Oh. We're good. We're good. Yeah. All right. Is it better? More? Good? Bad? We good? All right. Thanks for coming, guys. It's been a couple years since we've done this, I think. So I brought a lot of stuff. I'm not going to be showing much inside of Zbrush. I did record a lot of things. I've tried to do this presentation before, and some people might be here that seen this, and it was a lot of stuff. Very hard to go through everything, so I apologize if I'm going too fast or too slow on a few things, but I'm going to try to just kind of catch you up on a lot of things that I've been up to on the past year or a couple years. More like the past year, to be honest, because finished God of War. It's been a year, a little over a year, but it feels like years to me. Thank you. I know it's been a while. It's been a while. It feels like years to me. It feels like more than 1 year. But yeah, I want to touch base on that a little bit, and then just jump in on more of the personal work that I've been up to this past year. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and we can kind of talk about why and some of the things that I've been trying. I brought the Yoshimitsu project so we can take a look and go through all the design process that I did that, and a time lapse of everything, and that's why it's going to be crazy fast. So we can talk about a little bit of the why and the behind the scenes. I brought a lot of my personal projects to talk about the rendering process, things that I've been trying, things that I find useful, and why I'm doing certain things, and we're going to talk about 3D printing. That's kind of the new thing for me for this past few months. And I want to share with you guys some of the things that I found and things that I've been trying. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of stuff, and we only have an hour. I thought we were going to have an hour and a half. I don't know if we're going to have questions or not, but we'll find out at the end of this. So yeah, they're nice. So the big guy. I want to just talk. The reason I wanted to talk about God of War, or at least address it, is for you guys to, or at least talk about the process and the differences that I've been having with this versus my personal work. A lot of this stuff takes a long time. Yeah, I spent more than a year working on this guy, and a lot of people that might see my work online, personal work, and the things that I'm doing like a couple of days, I think a Kratos will take a couple of days, and it took more than a year to figure out the design, to build this thing from scratch. We went through all the anatomy, everything, sculpted in Zbrush. We did the blend shapes. So the main tool that we use here was Zbrush, but of course, for those who work in the game industry know that there's a lot more that goes behind just the Zbrush sculpt. We actually did a talk beginning of this year or last year here about all this stuff, so make sure to check that out if you haven't yet. Just kind of talking about the process for the game, a lot of the early explorations. I had a chance to do a lot of clay sculpts early on. So it was a lot of fun trying to figure out the new IP, trying to figure out the characters and everything, and working in parallel with Zbrush, and then working with the team and finishing out the assets. If you guys have any questions after the show, I'll be happy to answer. But yeah, I just want to brought these to kind of illustrate that these take a long time, from the design to the 3D to the sculpt, then to the low poly. We do the low poly in Maya or TopoGun. Some guys use TopoGun, to the baking and X-Normal at the time. A lot of people are migrating to Substance, doing bakes in Substance and all that. But I used a lot of X-Normal. I don't have time to do a lot of these things anymore since I've been kind of changing, role inside the studio. But these are some of the past characters I had a chance to create from the game. And this was super fun too, a lot of Zbrush. Very fun stuff. So yeah, it was around 3 to 4 years of production. I made tons of characters for this game. So these are just a few of them. So that brings me to more of the personal work. After we shipped that game, and I was moving more to more of a director's role, like a lead role, I was doing less and less art throughout that time. So I started focusing a lot more on how can I convey an idea or express myself without having to spend weeks and months inside of Zbrush to finish out a character or to give feedback. So I started to do a lot more of the quick sketches. And at work, I was doing a lot more paint overs, giving feedback, and working closely to biz dev artists and kind of seeing what's out there and what people have been using. A lot of concept artists, or pretty much all of them, are using more 3D tools these days. Things are changing. So I'm starting to just try out some stuff. For those who follow my work for years, know that I've been doing a lot of ZBrush renders throughout my career, and just trying stuff, like working with the guys at Pixelogic and trying to figure out best ways to showcase the models inside of ZBrush. These are ZBrush renders. So doing a lot of passes and then composing them back in Photoshop. So every model that I do, I try something new or try a different pass that might bring something to the end result. So I brought these to show you guys just the passes later on. So then I started to do a lot more just 2 days projects. Like these were sculpted in 1 day, and then the other day was rendering. And that stuff was to really try to get the idea out there. I brought these to show you guys how far I went into the sculpt. To then, like the more I was doing it, the more I was realizing how much I need to push and how much I was comfortable inside of Photoshop or because I started doing renderings outside of ZBrush, but how much I was comfortable outside of ZBrush to then put a stop in it and know what the end result will be. And metals, trying out different things, trying out skin, which is kind of tricky to do in ZBrush. Then I went to same thing, maybe trying to. The more I was doing these, the more I was understanding the pipeline that I needed to have, and the more I was building up a library of things that I needed. So like hands, hair, faces, I was kind of building up that library to be able to pull off bigger projects and things like that. Anatomy, models. I didn't bring that to this presentation, but the Avengers one, if you turn it on the side of the camera, it was all floating and broken and all that stuff. So a lot of the stuff was more with that kind of printed ad mindset, where things are made for that shot, and I'm rendering that and painting that. So it's a lot more of a design piece, a concept art piece, than a 3D final project. And that's the one thing, and the reason we're talking about this stuff, and I wanted to kind of always touch on that, is the differences between concept art and character art in general, right? When I started my career, when I still do work as a character artist, I think that's very different from the stuff that I've been doing today. I'm definitely going more on the design, concept art kind of process, where before, going through sculpting the character, topology, bakes, being able to reproduce a concept that already exists, those things are always the things that are very important for a character artist. So just keep that in mind, understanding what it takes and how you're going to build up a portfolio if you are starting, because it's very easy to get lost on things like this, and this has its place for a character artist, of course, because when I'm doing these, I'm training my artistic eye, my design sense, everything, composition. It's super valuable, and I started doing these because I felt that there was a gap in my knowledge for that. So just keep an eye, or keep it in mind that a lot of the things that I was doing early on when building a portfolio, building a character from scratch, trying to show the workflow and the tech aspects of everything, that is important for those who are trying to get a job as a character artist. So just keep that in mind. Then I don't want to go too deep into the social media stuff and the reason why I was doing certain things, but we're going to talk a little bit about that throughout the presentation, because I started doing a lot more things that was in the pop culture that I was enjoying at the time. I have a young kid that is also into a lot of those things, so I did start doing a lot more of the things that I'm passionate about, and I talk a lot about that at the podcast that we did early today, where some of the reasons why I've been doing or moving into more of this kind of stuff, because it's something that I'm passionate about. When I started in advertising, I did tons of this stuff. When you work at advertising, especially the time that I was at advertising, was a lot of the time where the little mascots were very popular on TV. So I was doing a lot of that back then. I don't even know if you call it mascots in the US, but I guess. So that was kind of me going back a little bit and trying that stuff. I still think I need to improve a lot on that, on just a stylized kind of genre, and I'm going to try to do more, especially designing stuff myself. All these are recreations of existing IPs, but I want to try to do more and create stuff for myself. And the only way I'm going to do that is by practicing and understanding. When I'm doing these, I'm studying it behind the scenes, like why is it working, what things that are more relevant. The same thing for these guys. It was definitely understanding like what do I need to do to make it presentable, how far do I need to push, what is cute, what's creepy, what's the in-between. So even when I started, these are about like 2 to 3 hours each to try to get it, the sculpt and the painting on top. So I got really fast on just sketching out the characters, and then bringing Photoshop and just painting on top and presenting it. So this was kind of a challenge that I set myself to do early this year. And I think I made like, 20-something of them? Is that you? I'll make a variant of it. That's you. But yeah, these are super fun. And it kind of started as a simple, just kind of, fun task, but I learned so much. And I definitely can see the improvement from when I started to where I am now and how fast I can pull these off. So I was doing like, when I started, I already had a few done because I set myself to post it every day. These were kind of like dailies that I was doing it. And the way I was able to pull that off is like through the weekend, I would do 3 or 4 of them. And then throughout the week, I would do like 1 or 2 to be able to make sure I was able to post it every day. Because with work and family and all that stuff, it's very hard to then dedicate every single day to these things. But yeah, it was super fun. We can talk more about that later on. And I was just doing like just quicker studies on trying to get a bust, do render in Zbrush, and then starting. Oh, just to be clear, I forgot. And these are later on in the year. I was doing a lot of Zbrush renders. These were done in Arnold and in 3ds Max. So that's another thing that I've been exploring is just setting up scenes because these are a little later than the Smash. It's kind of out of order. And these are Arnold renders, and I've been setting up scenes, setting up lights. Again, trying to set up that library that's easy as a concept artist or a VizDev artist to like pitch ideas and being able to drop in a model and have it set up, ready to go. Like I'm not for every scene setting it up. And we'll talk more about that. Back to these guys or rendering ZBrush. So it's the same thing like rendering passes, composing in Photoshop, and then the final paint job is like minimal, but it helps a lot. I think when we get to that point where the detail and the precision is the important thing, it usually takes the longest, right? So for me, being able to sketch it and get it close to what it needs to be, it's fast. It's fast, and it's something that I think I've done it enough that I can get to a result that I'm happy with faster than before. But when to get to that point to like finish it out, doing all that, the saliva and all that stuff, like that stuff takes time, and especially if you're gonna render that inside of ZBrush. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm doing outside of ZBrush. A lot of the cleanup, especially on the hard surface, it takes time to clean up stuff to get it to be perfect. So a lot of the things that I'm doing in Photoshop is polishing it up, doing the final touches, and I'll show you in a second. This is a little more recent stuff that I've been messing with, and it's same thing, like I did this first from ZBrush, rendering ZBrush, and I did a lot of a paint over on top to get changes that I wanted to make in the design. This was kind of an original design done straight in ZBrush. So I was doing similar to the paint overs that I do for like other artists. I'm trying to do that for myself and put it in Photoshop, do some quick notes, and bring in references, compose it, come up with a final design, and then I'll bring that back to ZBrush and then re-sculpt it, apply the changes, and this was rendered in 3ds Max using Arnold, and then a final touch is done in Photoshop. So this is a lot of things. I feel that now I'm getting to a point where that cycle of like that process is becoming a little bit easier, so I can do these a lot faster. And then this guy, very similar process. This was more of a kind of design challenge that I set myself to do. A little more complex than some of the other characters. Like this definitely took more time than a couple of days. And then, same thing. This was rendered in Zbrush, very, very straightforward. But I want to show you guys a little trick, some tricks that I've been using on these to be able to get to this result inside of Zbrush. But before that, I brought just behind the scenes of how I got to that point. So for those, this is a PureRef board, and this is a very simple one. For those who haven't used PureRef before, it's kind of a reference layout software that's very, very easy to use, user-friendly, and free. You can get it. So this was a redesign of the classic Yoshimitsu, not the recent ones. Those are kind of bad. But the old Tekken 3, the good stuff, the sword-pounding guy, to get it, to make it a new take. Like, this is a lot of the things that I've been doing recently, professionally as well. So here you can kind of have an idea of how I started to think about this. I always have, and this is a very kind of simple board, to be honest. Like some of the other projects that I've done have massive boards. So this guy, if you notice, I start with a. Does this work? There you go. Even better for those at home. So I started with kind of like the main reference, and even if this wasn't a redesign task, if this was more of a just existing concept or a new concept, I'm always going to have a main inspiration for the project, and this is kind of what this is right here. Then I'll start having like some real materials, real reference, some rendering shaders that I like. I like to have everything kind of ready to go and almost taking what's in my head and putting in paper per se, of like, here's everything that I'm going to reference to when I'm going through this. So if it is modeling, I have reference for models, 3D models, that got to the same quality that I'm trying to get to. Like same thing down here. These are more 3D model reference. Then I have real life reference, and that goes for like real life materials to like real armor, anything that will help me to bring this to a more realistic take on it. Then I'll have concept art that really inspired some of the tweaks that I'm gonna make to the design and some of the references that I'm gonna bring into, and then again I'll have shaders, renders, and then I'll have kind of final presentation, which is kind of, I can't really zoom in because it's just a photo, but kind of final presentation of how I want to present this. So if you put a lot of these together, you do start seeing where I end up with. And I try to do this for every project just so I don't get lost, especially if I'm trying to execute this on a very short time. I'm trying to get like this, and this, like go, that's execution, and then I'm done. If I start to like be unhappy with certain things and I have to go back, make changes like that, of course, it's gonna take a year and a half like Kratos did. And that's why it took that long. So yeah, this is a time lapse of everything. And I want to point out a few different things while we watch this, but it's very fast, so maybe we can play it twice if it's too fast. But I started with the base mesh that I have of my human character that I made for the anatomy. It's like anatomy base mesh. And then from there, I'm like sketching out a lot of things inside of that with using clay, very straightforward. I'm trying to get a lot of the shapes like on top of the model. I'm not like painting a sphere, painting objects, trying to position in place. I'm sculpting it on top of a mannequin, right? And then from that, I'm describing because it's going to be fast. From that, I'm going to start extracting stuff from that mesh, and that's the way I tend to. That's how I find to be very fast at blocking out a lot of these things that have a lot of accessories, is because I'm already have things in place. They already have the shape that I want. All that I'm doing is extracting, Z-remeshing, finishing it out, and I'm doing that for everything. This way, when I get to that point, everything is in place, everything is ready to go. Then after that, it's just detailing. So I'll play the video and we'll talk about what's happening. So you see, like from the base mesh, I'm using mask, I'm using clay, I'm sculpting a lot of things, trying to block everything from that piece. The things that I'm extracting is because I use a lot of Dynamesh when I'm doing these, and I start extracting pieces so the Dynamesh doesn't overlap or destroy what's been done. So a lot of it, like for example, those plates, of course they need to be as a separate piece, because if I start Dynameshing what's up there, it's gonna start merging all those pieces together. So I'm still being smart on what I'm doing, but it's very much like doing on top of that piece. So for now, like now I'm just extracting things. I use a lot of masking. Extracted that face, I'm sculpting that mask. And the brushes here are very, very straightforward. Move, clay, standard. That's all I need. So we're doing a lot of like trying to get the shape. Of course, I'm looking at references while I'm doing this. Oh, too fast. And there's only like twice as fast as it's speed up twice, I think. Now it's like 30 times faster. But you can see now, like after I have all the pieces, then they're still merged together. So like all that I'm doing is like by masking. So for like that the trapezius piece to that chest piece, they're all one piece. And I'm masking it, pushing it out, trying to extrude it, but keeping it within the same mesh as much as I can. I try to avoid splitting it up too much unless I really need it to refine it or Z-remesh it or do something like that. So after I have this blocked out, then I did a transpose master to just get proportions right. And then from now, I'm going to start really going piece by piece and doing a similar thing that I did to the whole thing, but I'm doing it piece by piece. And that's when we start getting into like the finer details or the smaller pieces. And originally, I did this piece to try to just do a concept piece. So I wasn't thinking too much about topology or anything, to be honest, like even things clipping through. The face doesn't even fit inside that mask. Is just part of it. Because then I was going to paint on top. But the more I was doing it, the more I just decided to do as much as I can to not paint or paint the minimum that I had to, just to try to get the quality a little higher than the stuff that I was doing early on. So a lot of these things I'm using from what was already there, and then I'm extracting it, cleaning it up. Now you can see like from that chest piece, now is the time that I'm really taking that subtool and splitting into parts. And then from there, I can Z-remesh, I can clean it, I can do a lot of things. And this is very dirty work. If you're at the studio and you're doing this kind of stuff, it's not cool. But again, this is just to try to get the idea fast. I'm closing the fist because I wanted to just, again, make it fast, make it easier. Here I'm doing the ropes. So I did one roll of ropes, and I'm duplicating it, creating a chain, or a rope, not a chain. And then from there, I dynamesh it all together, and then I'm just bending it in place. So very straightforward. Here, simple details. When we get to this point, is just patience and a lot of doing the same thing that we've doing before, but like every time you go in, first pass, second pass, third pass, like you just get deeper and deeper into the refinement of the piece. But it's the same process. You just do spend more time on it. That's the thing. And you can see I'm not really spending a lot of time in just one piece. That is super important, especially if you're designing it in the fly without a concept art. I'm going overall, looking at everything, then going back, spending a time on a piece, then putting a pause, moving into the whole thing, looking at everything, going to another piece. Like if I spend just a lot of time on this chest piece and then try to make that perfect, everything else will not be done or not to par with that chest piece. And then later, if I want to change it, then I'll be resistant to changing it because I spent a lot of time on it. So definitely bouncing around, going back and forth, trying different things is super important. There's a cool little trick too, when I get to this point of just finishing out a lot of the models, I do a mask by cavity, invert that, and just do a little inflate, and that sharpens up everything. Like that's usually, if you're trying to finish out a model, that's a cool little trick to just get it to look finish. That's what I'm doing here. So I'm not really sculpting a lot of things. Should have put a message of seizures at the beginning of this video if you watch it for too long. But yeah, really just trying to go fast because we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. But I hope this makes sense. A lot of it now is like I'm extracting it from existing models, bringing in tubes and whatnot. When we got to this point, is a lot of like, I found a language that was working. It was kind of a challenging part to this, just because there's not a lot of armors that have this kind of detail. When you start looking into Chinese armors and Japanese, this is a lot more Japanese, but there's a lot of Chinese influence on the armor, and that's when the reference from the historical references of armors like come into place of like trying to find that language. And I try to replicate some of the Chinese stuff, but it was kind of tricky to do it on a shoulder pad since there's kind of a more gamey shoulder pad. So I think finding that language, this was more part of the old design, so I was trying to reflect that into some of the other pieces. But it was a kind of a little bit of a challenge to find something that was working. And then nobody wants to do legs, like, so this is kind of a boring part to just try to get it done.
Every day's leg day, pal.
I know. Even in the 3D, it sucks. All right. So the thing is here's a compose render that I did for that final piece. So this is not just, it is kind of a straight out of ZBrush, but the one thing that's tough in ZBrush that you can, when you do like matte caps and you paint on different objects, so let's say I have a metal piece, a metal chest piece, and I have a cloth neck, I can assign materials to those objects, but then I kind of lose a little bit of the control later on. So that when I do these things, I try to have a lot of control inside of Photoshop. So I do render passes, and ZBrush is very fast to render. So I do a lot of different passes of like, I'll do a metal shader, and then I'll do a cloth shader, I do a skin, I do a standard, and I do all kinds of lighting scenarios. And then later I'll bring that in Photoshop, and I'll compose everything. And then I'll do a mask ID just with like flat colors. If you've seen, there's tons of like stuff that I've done before you can find of that process. And a lot of people use this process of like doing IDs and doing all these render passes. And then I bring into Photoshop. And then with all the light directions that I have, I can start, slowly changing the opacity and changing that light direction, which gives me the freedom to later on change the style of lighting that I want. So this is just kind of a basic lighting that has a little bit of a GI fake because I did a bunch of like different lights, and they're little. Some of them are kind of, I guess, bleeding into the other passes to give that GI feeling. Then from here, what I would do is I'll also render all those passes with no specular. I put the spec to like a minimum, maybe like 2 or 3 or 4. Just have a little bit, but nothing that's. So I'll go back. Nothing that's super. There is spec here for sure, of course, but it's very minimal. And then I'll do the spec passes separate, because then I can come in and with a kind of a blacken. If I put my diffuse to black and I only do the spec, I can compose it later with the screen mode and get that spec to pop. And then because we can't really paint any specular inside of ZBrush yet, not that I know that we can, but maybe they'll hear me. Then in Photoshop, I have that control. I can come in with textures. I can throw in masks on top of that spec map and create a little bit of that specular map information that I wouldn't be able to do inside of ZBrush. This here, I'm just flipping back and forth, and you can see it's very subtle, but what I'll do is I'll do a bottom light, then I'll compose it. I'll make it a red kind of bottom light. Again, with the dark diffuse, it's a very dark light, just a little bounce, red bounce, that will bring this to life a little bit. So that's kind of like bounce to the bottom there. And then I'll do a couple backlights, and those are very straightforward, just kind of coming in with the screen, very contrasty, and then screen mode to bring the backlight. And then here's where it starts to get interesting. From here to here, it's all pretty much the same passes that I have, but now because I have everything available, I can come in and start playing with the spec, maybe bringing all those lights down so the spec pops, and then I'll force that backlight even more. So you can see like backlight, very rim light on the edge. And then I'll bring that rim light on the side. And so everything's available in the way I'm structuring my layers. I can easily create a lot of different lighting scenarios with the same setup. And then from here to here, what I'm using it is the Z depth pass will give me, so I can do depth of field, I can do all those kinds of things. I can also use to change the focus a little bit of the model and bringing the focus to the head and darkening the rest. So I'll put the Z depth on top of everything. And then from here to here, a little levels correction. And then from this is what I ended up with in ZBrush, purely ZBrush. And then from here to here is more of a color correction, adjust a little bit of the proportions on the legs since we didn't spend too much time on the legs and got to thicken them up a little. And then doing some color adjustments and the eyes. We can't really do emissive in ZBrush yet, but it's coming. So yeah, so you can see like from here to here is very subtle changes. I do go in, I start sharpening a lot of the details where I have to. I didn't have to a lot on this model, but you see on some of the other ones where I kind of come in, start to like, very, very straightforward with like just lines and sharpen some of the things that were kind of loose. All right, and this guy is a very different process. And it was a very early on that I was trying these techniques and everything. So this is you can see the difference from that one to like kind of where we ended up in ZBrush. And this is a very quicker sketch, just a couple days I did the whole body, and then trying it out, bringing into Photoshop as is. The passes were kind of rough. It was a lot more, I wanted to practice more of the concept and drawing on these, but I wanted to have a solid base. I'm not the best, I guess, concept artist out there. So very strong base to then start cleaning it up, bringing photos, adjust some of the, clean up some of the stuff, especially on the chest. You can see, I start cleaning up a lot of these edges. So again, this model was purely created as a concept art piece, and then later on, I finish it, I printed it, and I'll show you what it takes to get there in a second. But yeah, start cleaning it up, all the lines. You can see the helmet is very much of a rough sketch, doesn't have a lot going on. Then bringing in a little bit more of the metal rendering, try to change a little bit I guess the metal, how it was behaving. Oops, I'm all over the place. So yeah, changing some of the highlights, really like painting, trying to paint light at this point. Adding some textures. So this piece, I'll love to do another one when I'm actually sculpt the whole thing. I think it'll look much better. But again, this was more and a lot more of a concept art piece that I put together. Same thing for this guy. And you can see, and here's kind of like how far I was taking some of these pieces that I was spending like a day and just trying to block it out, everything. And again, like very sketch, very similar to the process that we saw in the Yoshimitsu, but instead of like going in, extracting pieces, cleaning it up, spending the time, this will probably take me a couple days to like clean up to final. But here I decided to stop and just do it, just do it in Photoshop, do it more as a concept art piece. So here's a final kind of take on that from the ZBrush passes. It was a very similar thing to the Yoshimitsu render passes, trying to get all the metals, compose it, getting all the backlights, everything to look nice. And then from here to here, like that's the cleanup in Photoshop. So you can see I have all my information on kind of like, the design elements and where materials were supposed to react and behave and all that stuff. But, from here to here, there is a big kind of jump. And for me to get to this only inside of ZBrush will take me some time. So that's the kind of like things that I've been exploring just to try to convey an idea, but still use ZBrush as the main tool to get some of these things across. And if I were to go back and finish it like I did with that Predator, then I have a strong target to hit. So, and that's kind of what we were talking about for the Nova. The beginning was super rough, and to get to this final quality, it's kind of what I'm talking about, of like going back, cleaning it up. So I brought just a comparison of like the model for the sketch that I made, just to try to get versus like the final that I use it to print and everything. So here's all like, I'm doing everything with masks, doing it brushes, a lot of like the slash brush to create those lines, masking to try to get it as clean as I could. But to get to here, I'm extracting everything. I'm trying to clean up with H polish, try to make everything perfect. You can see the difference on the helmet. What everything, like I had a very strong target to go to try to hit. Like even the back I didn't design on that sketch. So all this was like doing like the loops, masking, extracting everything inside of ZBrush, of trying to clean up. And then all the patterning on the arms and the abs is all like just alpha. So I'll do a mask. I'll mask that area, apply an alpha using, what do we call it? Surface detail, something like that. So what I wanted to show here to you guys is that for this to be ready to print, what I'm looking for is that the mesh is clean from the outside. So even though I sculpted all this using separate pieces, separate meshes, before I send it to print this stuff, I'm looking into the inside, make sure everything is combined. I'm using Dynamesh to combine everything. And I'm going on the inside with the double-sided and looking at the inside, seeing if there's any floating mesh, seeing if there's anything that's like penetrating into each other, and cleaning that up. The way I'm cleaning that up is I'm deleting it, Dynameshing it again, going in, just seeing if everything is a shell. Like if there's anything that will create a fail print, is you can find it here. And I can show that by just looking at this Yoshimitsu piece. So this is like the final, not the final that I sent to print, but this is one of the versions that I combined everything. So like all the face was sculpted in a lot of different pieces. So here I'm going in, combining it with Dynamesh, make sure it's all one piece. And then when we look at it from the inside, we got to make sure it's all just a single shell. When you are sculpting kind of like very dirty like I was doing it, you find a lot of bad things when you get to this point that you have to clean up. So what I'm looking at is like, is there any piece that I was floating before or had a gap that you can see the interior? Like all this needs to be just a one single shell to avoid any prints. So you can kind of see, I think in this piece, yeah. Because before you could see here, like this piece that is just floating inside, this will be floating, or the printer will try to replicate that, and then you most likely get a failed print when this happens. So if you look at the actual model, and you can kind of see that piece is all over the place because it's all like interpenetrating stuff. So the reason I do, or the way I do to clean this up is like I start isolating that part, I'll remove it, I'll delete it, and then I'll Dynamesh it again to a point where there's nothing left. You can kind of see here just how this thing was built before. And it was, this is the final one, but before, this was kind of like very, very messy, and a lot of these pieces were floating, penetrating within each other. So when I start combining all that stuff, of course I'm gonna have issues. But that's kind of what I'm looking for, like all these little things, like make sure that nothing's floating. So if you look at this one that's all combined, and we look at it from the inside, it needs to be, everything needs to be just one shell. So that's kind of like, from that just quick sketch to get to this point, it does take a while, and it's a little of a boring process to do, but like it needs to be done. And it's very straightforward, like a lot more technical. I'm just pretty much looking at and try to understand what the printer was gonna try to do and remove everything that's like free hanging and that's gonna create problems. So that brings us to more of the 3D printing stuff that I've been doing or messing with. And I got into this journey of like 3D printing this year, really to try to make it more affordable for myself, because I was doing a lot of like very expensive prints before. And I just wanted, because I'm doing a lot of these sketches and try to get stuff out fast, I just wanted to print stuff and have them, right? And be able to like, knock a sketch out tonight and send it to a print without worrying of like how much it was gonna cost or if it's gonna fail, and just try stuff, learn. So I've been messing with like a couple different printers. For those of you following me in social media has probably seen these, but these are the main ones that I've been messing with. The Photon S is a resin printer. It's a smaller print. It has a smaller print bed. You can't really print stuff too big, but the quality is very comparable with the highest printers out there, and it's very cheap. And the resin is cheap. There's no assembly that needs to be done. So for these sketches that I was doing, and I just wanted to see like a little bust, or I wanted to play with it, and understand a little bit more and make mistakes and all that stuff. This was awesome. It was one of my favorite printers that I have right now, and I'll show you some of the behind the scenes, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The resolution is very comparable with like the high-end printers out there, and it's got great resins and great support. The other one that I've been doing a lot of experiments with is the Creality series, like the Ender 3, the Ender 5, the CR10. Those are very similar printers, and these are filament printers. So you still see the lines, but the quality is getting very good, very good. And this is very cheap, $230. You can buy like a big roll of filament for like 50, 60 bucks, and you can print, tons of stuff with it. So anyways, the reason I want to bring this today is just to at least share with you guys or expose a little bit of the things that I've been playing with, because I think we need to do more of that. I think once I got exposed to these type of printers, it kind of opened up my eyes a lot to the different side of the industry where people are using these and trying. And I think we are at the other side of things when we are the creators and we are making these things. So I think the more we get exposed to these and we try it out, I think the more we're going to help for the technology to grow. So I'll definitely recommend if you guys have the chance to play with these. These are pretty good. The Ender series, there is some assembly that's needed, and the learning curve is a little, it takes a little while, but I learned a lot more than with the resin printers, because you have to know about like nozzle temperature, bed temperature. Like if you mess with filament printers, you probably know what I'm talking about. But it's very rewarding. Like I learned a lot more about 3D printing by using one of these than 10 years that I've been doing this. So I definitely recommend. So here are some examples of the Photon. That's the resin one that you can get very good qualities or very cheap. Like from ground to get to this point, you probably cost me like $300, which is like the price of resin if you want to print with some other printers. So like very, very user-friendly, definitely recommend. So I have a little video of some of the things that you've probably seen like on my socials, but this is the printer kind of like in action. And you can kind of have an idea of like the print bed and some of the results of the things that I've been getting. This is pretty much like plug and play. You just put the resin in and you get the printout. So I've been very happy with just being able to print something overnight without costing me more than 20 bucks. And this is the quality with the printer. It's like pretty impressive. They have like tons of different printers. So yeah, the reason I'm bringing up this printer is because I have it, but there's tons of like LCD printers out there that you could get your hands on for not a lot of money. So definitely recommend you guys checking it out. This is a quick video of the Ender, which is the filament one, just to show you guys a little bit of that process, which is a lot more assembly that's needed, but again, very straightforward. That was my dog. Doesn't help with the fur, with the hair. But yeah, assembly, but very straightforward to put together. And here's a little bit of the learning curve to get things, level, to get, here's some failed prints, and you still see the lines. So there's a little bit of like learning and trying to get everything leveled up and perfect. But again, the community out there is incredible. Like there's so much stuff out there that I didn't have exposure before. So I definitely recommend you guys looking and trying to print out some of your models, because not a lot of people are doing that. And this is the Yoshimitsu was actually printed on that machine, which is a $250 machine, which is crazy to think about. But so the technology is changing quite fast, and this is just me painting the piece. So the painting, for those who probably seen it or haven't seen it, I'm just using acrylics and washes and airbrushing, like very, very straightforward on the miniature painting style. So yeah, so for me, like even thinking back 6 months ago and being able to print this in a $250 machine, it's crazy. And I'm very excited to, like, there's a lot of new printers coming out, bigger printers with the resin LCD, eco resins. Like I think the future is really awesome for these for the technology. And I think us, as being on the other side, have kind of the edge of like creating our own projects and being able to, push this to the max. So this is a little project that I did for Lightbox last month, which was kind of pushing it a little bit. I guess taking everything that I've been studying since to this point, this past 6 months, and try to combine it. Like I was doing it, very complex piece from scratch, and designing it, trying to design with no concept or anything, and then splitting it up into a bunch of parts. And then I was gonna challenge myself to print these on like the bigger parts, printing on the ender. The smaller parts I was gonna print on the photon, and I was gonna try to sculpt a lot of things by hand, and then see how far I could push it, and and start to combine a lot of those things. So here's a little bit of that process. So you see, I printed the head and the two boots on the same bed, on the photon, and then clean it up, and then the quality is just, spot on. And then I went and started printing the chest and the ender, just to try to get, I could possibly print this on the photon, but I'll probably have to split it, and I didn't want to split it, and I just printed on the ender, so that's the process on that, and it came out, again, pretty spot on too, because the print is big. It was easy to, and because they have like this different printers, it's all the same file, I can, they should just work. Then I printed the legs on the ender. I printed the arms in the ender, and then starting to put together. This is kind of like daily. Like I'll set it, I'll leave it running, go to work, come back, and then it'll be done. So it's kind of like each print took like a day and a half. And then as you noticed, it would build, the nozzle would just drop the filament, build it up, and print the arm. So I was impressed with some of the results that I was getting with the ender on this stuff. Like all the details are there. And then I start to then push it a little bit more and then print that base. Like the base was massive, and it was probably a mistake that I tried to print the base that big. Then I got a couple Glauco. I had to borrow his machine to try to get it printed in time for Lightbox. So I was printing, like running a lot of printers at the same time, try to get it to be done in time. And then I decided to, here's one piece. So I split that head in 4, and that bed is big, but the head is like life size, like a head. So just trying to like get all the pieces to print in time, and then I decided to sculpt a lot of things by hand because I wasn't gonna have time to print it. But again, this just shows like the potential that some of these things have. And then just for like very cheap, being able to get this like big piece done for with a pretty good quality. So a lot of the things like very exciting for me, like to being able to do a lot of these quick studies and sketches and being able to knock out a lot of models fast and have access to this kind of technology. I think it opens up so much that I want to explore, and being able to like just test out things like what can I test and make different prototypes for different toys and statues and stuff like that, and being able to design my own stuff using Zbrush and get from that initial sketch to clean it up and then make print ready and being able to execute it with a very short budget. It's very exciting. So again, I mean, it's been all over the place, but I hope it makes sense, and I can probably try to share everything that's been going on, and maybe you can pick out a few things that maybe will help you guys somehow. But that's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
You made it in time. It was too fast.
What's that?
You have time.
Yeah, of course we have time.
Cool.
But they're gonna maybe have questions, right? I hope. Let's start off by opening up the floor here inside the green screen hangar. How about one more round of applause? That was great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
How about for you?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so any questions? Oh, hey. Whoa. Speak into the box. Speaker box.
Okay. When you
Gotta hold it up.
Okay.
It's actually a microphone.
Really?
Yeah, this part right here.
Hello,
Look, check this
hello.
out. Ready? Check. Hey.
Awesome.
Let's go.
Okay, so when you print big parts like that and you want to sculpt the other ones by hand, what are you using? Like epoxies or polymer clays?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Okay.
Good
Epoxy,
question.
monster clay, but monster clay doesn't harden. But I do a lot more of the traditional stuff that I do is in monster clay. And then I use super Sculpey for the things that I want to bake. But for the fixing stuff in the prints is epoxy. Yeah. Very straightforward, yeah.
Hey, firstly, I want to say thank you so much for presenting this amazing work and your amazing workflow.
Thank you.
I was really curious, when it comes to texturing, do you retopologize then texture, or do you use like UV Master and ZBrush, or how do you go about texturing?
So I do a lot of, it's all poly paint. So nothing have UVs. Even the stuff that I'm doing in Max these days, I'm doing everything with a vertex color just to speed up the process. So the time that it takes to like set up shaders and things like that, I'm going through and doing everything with exporting vertex. And then with a plugin, I will import the poly paint inside of Max. And I'll use that to drive then, I don't know how deep I want to get in here, but the shaders then do a lot of like, high masks or depth masks to do like cavities out of procedurally inside of Max. But everything, there's no UVs or anything. It's all done in shaders, yeah. Cool. Arnold. Oh, he asked me what's the rendering? It's Arnold. You just want to throw that box in his face.
Question 2. Just want to throw it. You're right. Louder.
That was the question, right? Like what rendering?
Speaking to the top of the box.
Is this it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
My question was, what render engine do you use in 3ds Max, considering that Mental Ray is
Oh
now
man,
dead?
I understood you without the box, but now with the box, I can't really hear you.
Thank you.
Say that again. Sorry.
Louder, louder.
Louder.
What's your engine in 3ds Max? to
Yeah,
render?
yeah, it's Arnold. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Give it a toss. Oh, look at that. Could have made state. No sweat. Bam, look at that. Okay, next question.
All right.
Thanks,
Hi,
man.
my name's Shane. A lot of your models have really great lighting and presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about your techniques whenever you're lighting? Your lighting techniques?
Yeah, yeah. Got it.
Talk a little bit about your techniques.
I got it.
Okay.
I think, we kind of touched base a little bit during the presentation. It's just more, even when I'm doing in Max, it is a lot more of like that kind of 3-point light setup inside of Arnold with big kind of light boxes. In presentation, it definitely varies. And to be honest, I'm still trying to find like what's the best way to present some of these things. I do want to do a lot more of like, I guess world building, like putting environments and things like that. Like that's kind of the next step, I think. I think that Predator like has a little bit more of that, so that's kind of what I'm trying to do more. But yeah, a lot of it's kind of the cliche 3-point light setup that kind of varies a little bit between projects, but that's kind of what works for characters. Like if you start to go too crazy, like it's okay. So it's a balance, especially now going into more of this concept art and viz dev, where a lot of the times hiding is better, but that goes against like the character art when you just want to show off your model and it's like look at all this work that I put into this piece. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to disconnect myself a little bit from, but it's hard. I think my brain doesn't switch that, doesn't flip that switch that easy. But again, yeah, just trying to find like what's the best way to present it. For character art, it's definitely like the 3-point light, some rim lights, and yeah. Hope
Nice.
that answers that, yeah.
Talk into the box right there.
Yeah.
The round part. You got it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
Testing. Hi. With your physical 3D printed models, when you go to paint them, are you just using an airbrush to get a matte cap on everything?
Yeah, so
Oh.
airbrush with acrylics. The question is, for painting the 3D models, the printed models, right? Yeah, airbrush, and then airbrush to get the base, and then going to acrylics to get like all the details, and then everything else just washes on top. So washes to get all the details to sink in, and then after just dry brushing for highlights with like a dry brush. It says dry brushing, yeah.
Oh, Saturday night.
Hey, so when you're working on those quick sculpts, they're just, you know, for ideation and,
Yep.
you know, your sketches. Do you worry at all about topology or, you know, having good low subdivision levels or anything like that, or you just go like straight up Dynamesh?
It's straight up Dynamesh. And then
Straight
with
up
colors,
Dynamesh. I like that. It's like a new saying. Straight up Dynamesh.
Dynamesh,
Is that
gotta
straight
make
up
a shirt.
Dynamesh?
Yeah,
Straight up.
Dynamesh.
So you just work straight up with like millions of polys and that's it?
Yeah. Dynamesh, then polypaint on top, and then do all the render passes, and then paint on Photoshop on top. But I do some, like, depending on what it is, like the Z-remeshing to get it somewhat clean is important, but it varies. Yeah.
I think I'm getting the wheels of steel. Oh, hold on a second. I'm sorry. That's exactly what you just yell it out. It's good.
What's this?
Okay, so we're going to take it to the Twitter. You know, when I was a kid, being a twit was something that was not, you were trying not to be one. But anyway, that's a whole other, from another time. He's a Highlander. This question comes from, I'm sorry. This question comes from Uncle Jesse. Does Raphael have a favorite go-to character that he likes to design? Do you have a favorite character that, like a go-to that you like to design, other than Kratos?
Man.
I'm sorry, that was a dig.
I have a lot of Spider-Man,
Spider-Man?
stuff on my portfolio, just probably because it's faster to do, I guess.
It's right there, yeah.
Easier. There's some mask and you're done.
Okay. I hope we can shift gears, get you to Luigi more
Right.
often. Yeah, Luigi. Okay, cool. That was nice.
Oh, you want me to say Luigi? Is that-
No, I don't want you to say anything. I mean, a live studio audience, a capacity crowd around the world. Say Luigi. I'm just kidding. Where'd that box go? Oh, hey,
Oh.
okay. Yeah, you're okay?
Yeah.
A couple
I'm
more
good.
is okay?
Yeah.
He's whistling at me? What the hell? Whoa, time out a second here. The gloves are off. Anna, what's happening? Just talk right into it.
Okay.
Yeah, don't be shy.
So you have like legendary
I saw you.
status when it comes to discipline and time management. Like you have a family, you have a huge full-time job,
Narcotics.
and that's how you do it, Louis. Can you tell us? I'm pretty sure you get this question everywhere you go. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you are so disciplined and
DMT.
amazing about that stuff?
Well, thank you. And thank you, Louis,
I'm
for
sure.
answering that. No, I think it really changes every year. I feel like it doesn't. There's no like, I guess, real answer to like, you know, how or why. It's just more of the way I think about it is I always start something. Like even if I don't want it to do any work, I always start something because then after I start, it's it's easy for me to go back to it. But when I don't have anything started, that's when I don't even want to sit down or do anything. Or it's very easy to go and just watch a TV or something, or just rest for the day. But I get more joy. I get more joy when I do stuff than when I sit down and do nothing. Because then the next day I'm like, man, I could have sculpted something by now, you know. And when I'm doing it, I'm like in the flow, and I like it, and I get something out of it. So I just force myself to start something. I think after that it goes a lot easier. And the way to make it easier to start is to make it whenever you, or the place that you're working, to make it like as comfortable as you can make it, and as inviting as you can. So one of my dreams when I was starting it was to have my own office and to have my space and be like amazing. I can just shut the door and be there. Like that never works, especially with kids and a family. So I think making it part of like more accessible when I start to bring in my kids now and to like show it to them and make it like, even though it seems like I'm very strict to the schedule, like I try to have those openings to like make it more enjoyable. And then when I have to stop and putting in the time, that's when I do it. And then that's when I shut myself and like use focus booster and all that stuff that.
And regular people go to sleep. People like us don't.
So I used to be the non-sleeping guy, but now I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, no kidding. Right?
Otherwise, next day I'll be miserable.
Okay, cool. So, good question. Now, I'm going to go to the Twitter, and then I saw you. Don't you worry. I'm going to toss this brick your way. I got you covered. Doug E. Wants to know, during the high-speed video demo, I noticed your mesh is colorized at an early stage. At what point do you choose a color palette for the sculpt? The Doug E question, please. The Doug E question.
Love it.
That's the Doug E question. I like how you branded that, the Doug E question.
As soon as I can, to be honest. Like, I think color indicates so much on the design that I spend the faster as I can to just throw some color in, I'll do that. So Yeah.
Hello.
Just kidding. Padded. It's like the room.
Hi. Okay. Oh, I'm Margaret, and I'm a beginning artist when it comes to 3D art and everything, and I really admire your work. And so far, I've been asking for.
I like it. Yeah.
So far, I've been asking for advice, and everyone tells me like, the one thing that beginning artists should learn, whether it's 3D or 2D, is anatomy. In your opinion, what's your advice when it comes to giving out any more advice for beginning artists?
So I think anatomy is one of the most important things. It's not the first thing you need to learn, though. Like I think anatomy comes when you're trying to do more of the. Are you distracting her? You good?
Tyler Boiler in the head.
Answering to.
I'm sorry, Tyler Boiler just got beamed in the head.
No, I'm just messing with you.
Carry on. I know.
But
we have a back and forth relationship.
But I think there is a time that you need to learn anatomy. Like people who start straight and kind of jump into anatomy, you have problems learning that, because I think you need to go through basics first of like trying to replicate props and things like that so you to get used to the tool. Especially in Zbrush, that's so easy to go and just do whatever you like, and the tool is so easy to use. So yeah, I think as long as you know how to use the tool, then you're starting to design characters. Then before you even do that, I would say anatomy is the step in between, because it is one of the core things that you need to know. But there's a point that you have to focus on that. The one thing that I see a lot is the people who jump straight into designing in Zbrush before even learning how to make a prop or how to look at reference, how to study anatomy, make a human body, and make a creature, or all of that following very strict constraints and references, and then designing. So I think that's kind of like you have to go through the stages, and I think anatomy is one of them, if not the more important one. Yeah.
Make a nice brick to start with.
No, exactly. Make a mouse. I remember when I started the thing that you made, it was like a mouse. In the thing.
Make a mouse, a brick.
I saw when you're printing with the ender, do you have any process about cleaning up your sculpts before, or do you just go straight to painting?
For the ender stuff, huh?
Yeah.
For the filaments, yeah. So that was one of the things that I had to learn, and just playing with different materials, because I used like a lot of the PLA filaments. I don't know who asked that question. And the PLA, you can't really, there's no solvents that work with it, so it's very hard to clean the lines. So I started using the PLA PHA. There's a little bit of PHA you can find online. The PHA reacts to acetone. So you can dunk that in acetone and clean it very easily. And that was, so that kind of changed a little bit for me, or helped a lot. But there's still a lot of sanding that needs to go in, and yeah. So there's a color fab filament that's PHA that's very good. That's the end of my presentation.
Guys, yes! You're my guy, man. You're my guy. Okay, we'll do surprises. Everybody having a good day here. Day 2 inside. I have, the gentleman I'm about to present has tremendous following, as you can see. We're like, now it's like beyond standing room. They're actually sitting on the ground. They've come to see you do your thing. It's you're an old-time buddy of mine, so it's my pleasure to introduce you. Without further ado, Raphael Grassetti. Make some noise.
There you go. Thank you. It's good to see you. Oh. We're good. We're good. Yeah. All right. Is it better? More? Good? Bad? We good? All right. Thanks for coming, guys. It's been a couple years since we've done this, I think. So I brought a lot of stuff. I'm not going to be showing much inside of Zbrush. I did record a lot of things. I've tried to do this presentation before, and some people might be here that seen this, and it was a lot of stuff. Very hard to go through everything, so I apologize if I'm going too fast or too slow on a few things, but I'm going to try to just kind of catch you up on a lot of things that I've been up to on the past year or a couple years. More like the past year, to be honest, because finished God of War. It's been a year, a little over a year, but it feels like years to me. Thank you. I know, it's been a while. It feels like years to me. It feels like more than 1 year. But I want to touch base on that a little bit, and then just jump in on more of the personal work that I've been up to this past year. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and we can kind of talk about why and some of the things that I've been trying. I brought the Yoshimitsu project so we can take a look and go through all the design process that I did that, and a time lapse of everything, and that's why it's going to be crazy fast. So we can talk about a little bit of the why and the behind the scenes. I brought a lot of my personal projects to talk about the rendering process, things that I've been trying, things that I find useful, and why I'm doing certain things. And we're going to talk about 3D printing. That's kind of the new thing for me for this past few months. And I want to share with you guys some of the things that I found and things that I've been trying. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of stuff, and we only have an hour. I thought we were going to have an hour and a half. I don't know if we're going to have questions or not, but we'll find out at the end of this. So, yeah, very nice. So, the big guy, I want to just talk. The reason I wanted to talk about God of War, or at least address it, is for you guys to, or at least talk about the process and the differences that I've been having with this versus my personal work. A lot of this stuff takes a long time. Yeah, I spent more than a year working on this guy, and a lot of people that might see my work online, personal work, and the things that I'm doing a day, a couple of days, I think a Kratos will take a couple of days, and it took more than a year to figure out the design, to build this thing from scratch. We went through all the anatomy, everything sculpted in Zbrush. We did the blend shapes. So the main tool that we use here was Zbrush, but of course, for those who work in the game industry know that there's a lot more that goes behind just the Zbrush sculpt. We actually did a talk beginning of this year or last year here about all this stuff, so make sure to check that out if you haven't yet. Just kind of talking about the process for the game, a lot of the early explorations. I had a chance to do a lot of clay sculpts early on. So it was a lot of fun trying to figure out the new IP, trying to figure out the characters and everything, and working in parallel with Zbrush, and then working with the team and finishing out the assets. If you guys have any questions after the show, I'll be happy to answer. But yeah, I just want to brought these to kind of illustrate that these take a long time, from the design to the 3D to the sculpt, then to the low poly. We do the low poly in Maya or TopoGun. Some guys use TopoGun, to the baking and X-Normal at the time. A lot of people are migrating to Substance, doing bakes in Substance and all that. But I used a lot of X-Normal. I don't have time to do a lot of these things anymore, since I've been kind of changing, role inside the studio.